Trong xuyên đâu giờ nhất là sông nó sự là tiểu bê Wausau nó là giờ đông người ta khao đi nó sông nó đã phát chịu sĩ lúc không chân nó để cho đi vật gì sẽ được tua trâu cổng đập bê chim không Wausau nó ở đây sẽ được trâu nữa trâu nó là bê chân để sẵn nữa trong xuyên thiê vật trâu này cho tôi là tôi lụa xử lý cho phát hết đón chờ bàn đó tôi và cho giả tôi cho bê luôn mong Wausau festival nó biết cho bê chân để sẵn thế bê cho bê sẵn nhau nó bê chân trong này tụi trên cha trên chỉ ở đây tôi cho bê còn nó giờ phải chẳng chẳng sẽ được ít sống quân gì nên tôi cho lu sống nên tôi cho bê chỉ mong nhau cho họ mình tạm khao đi nó bê trong xe ở đây sẽ được trâu nữa.
Please welcome the mayor of the city of Wausau, Katie Rosenberg.
Neng Xiong, good morning. Hmong American Wausau Festival. Chairman Neng Xiong, Governor Evers, Lieutenant Governor Rodriguez, all of our friends and family here. I'm so honored to welcome you all to Wausau for the 6th annual Hmong Wausau Fest. So, by some magnificent kismet, 17,277 days ago, our first Hmong family arrived in Wausau. I don't know if the 5 members of the Tao family who arrived that April day in 1976 realized that they weren't simply refugees forever displaced by war. They were groundbreakers whose roots would grow so deeply in Wausau that it would be impossible to imagine a world before we had Hmong neighbors. In the last 47 years, our community has grown, and we are so fortunate to be home to one of the largest Hmong populations per capita in the United States, at around 12%. So last night, we had a small, at least by the standards here today, reception for some of the folks you'll hear and see this morning. Now there's something to be said about being one of the only people in the room who doesn't speak Hmong. You start to tune into the body language of the speakers and the listeners. You start to notice where people are nodding, and you start to interpret this sort of universal human energy of the space. And one of the things that became abundantly clear was that I was witnessing an intentional passing of the torch. We heard from former Major Neng Xiong. We heard from Captain Zabong, former Lieutenant Nyob, and Zhanghan leader Neng Xiong. But we also heard from WACMA's first ever woman executive director, Neng Xiong. Yes. We heard from the dynamic and brilliant Central Wisconsin Hmong professionals, Neng Xiong. And of course, the ubiquitous and apparently tireless Hmong American Center Executive Director, Neng Xiong. Yes. And you all got to see him kind of zoom in on his motorcycle this morning, but we also heard from 19-year-old trailblazer Aiden Tao, who is the first professional motorcycle racer of Hmong descent. So in 2 generations, maybe less than that, these Hmong men are American heroes who scrapped their way through the jungles of Laos, risking life and limb to support the CIA's secret war as part of General Bang Pao's army, and then restarted their lives here, half a world away. They're saying it's time to empower their descendants to receive their legacy and blaze new paths that their great-grandparents could only imagine. Under that lens, when I think about what we're commemorating and celebrating here this weekend, it's hard not to get a little emotional. And it's a mix of excited anticipation for what's next, but also a little anguish for what we are losing and have already lost. In the last year, I've attended at least a dozen funerals for our Hmong and Lao veterans, often invited by the incredible leader and advocate, Lieutenant Nyob. In fact, this year I spent both Mother's Day and Father's Day with Neng Xiong, reflecting on and celebrating the efforts of our Hmong Lao veterans. Now, Neng Xiong is the president of the Wisconsin Hmong Lao Veterans of America, and the results of his tremendous advocacy speak for themselves. Wisconsin now recognizes Hmong Lao Veterans Day every May 14th. I'd be surprised to learn an elected or appointed official here didn't meet, talk to, or been invited to events by Neng Xiong because he's an extreme extrovert and an instant gregarious friend. When I asked if he'd be willing to have lunch with me to tell me a little bit more about his life and his service and his values and what makes him tick, I wasn't surprised that he said yes immediately. However, I was surprised by where he wanted to meet. Denny's restaurant, right off the highway in Rothschild. So when I got there, he was already seated, and when I walked in, the host asked me if I was meeting someone, and I just barely got out the first part of his name, and she directed me to the back of the restaurant where he was seated at a table under a folded up American flag and photos on the wall of veterans, including one of himself with the state commander of the VFW. We weren't at Denny's because he had a hankering for a Grand Slam. We were there because Denny's supports our veterans. Now, nearly all of Neng Xiong's life has been dedicated to being a soldier and recognizing his fellow veterans. In fact, one of his very first memories that was etched into his mind at just 4 years old, while he was with his mom tending to the crops in their farm field in Hmong Ma, Site 46 in Laos. It was about a day's walk from the border with Vietnam, and while they were working one day, they looked up to the sky towards what would become a 2-decade soundtrack of black helicopters thrumming across the countryside in Laos and Vietnam. For his members, his mom telling him that that first helicopter was a bad omen. After the war started, Neng Xiong's dad recognized the critical importance of this moment in history and began taking him to all of the clan meetings where leaders would discuss and debate how to address this war taking place in their region. One thing that was drilled into their heads, there was no good coming from the Viet Cong and the communist politicians in North Vietnam. During one of the meetings, Neng Xiong learned, along with the rest of the clan leaders, that their village leader's son had been killed. And it started a wave of families fleeing to save their families from that same fate. And it was also around that time that leaders decided to create a sort of Hmong draft. Each family was expected to send one son to the military to fight. Instead of fleeing, Neng Xiong's family stayed to lead the fight. Soon, U.S. military helicopters were dropping off supplies and weapons and training the Hmong soldiers how to fight. Now, if you've ever asked one of our Hmong Lao veterans how old they were when they first entered the war, they will almost undoubtedly tell you they were 14 years old. By most standards, they were children. And I asked Neng Xiong, why 14? Is that considered the age of an adult? No, it's not. That's the age at which a young soldier could likely fire an old rifle and not fall over backwards from the kickback. Now, whatever Neng Xiong's bravery is made out of, his dad's bravery was made out of that same big cosmic energy and vast optimism. After all, his talents were recognized, and he was one of the principal leaders from his village, helping push back the Viet Cong. What this looked like in practice was that he was leading 26 soldiers, and severely outnumbered, outmanned, and outgunned by the hundreds of Vietnamese soldiers who were closing in. But it wasn't just about being outnumbered. The Viet Cong had mastered the art of psychological warfare and would often disappear into the forest, using audio recordings to scare and draw Hmong soldiers out. They would drench strategic sites and camps in gasoline and light them on fire at 3 a.m. before swarming those soldiers who were running to escape the inferno. It's hard to fully appreciate what it was like growing up and being a teenager while also fighting as a special guerrilla unit soldier. One of the persistent dichotomies of Neng Xiong's life during that time was that even though he was in the midst of a war zone, he was still expected to carry on as a young Hmong man. Our conversation slowed as he told me about the last conversation he ever had with his father. His dad called him from a strategic post. He and the soldiers were guarding, and he began lecturing him about getting married. The next day at 3 a.m., Viet Cong soldiers ambushed and overwhelmed his father's post. And by 10 a.m., his family had received word that his father and 6 other soldiers had been killed in a sneak attack with bayonets. At that point, I don't think anyone could have blamed Nyob if he decided to get out of Laos and search for safety and new meaning. But Nyob isn't that kind of person to shrink away from adversity. At 18, he fully committed himself to being a soldier because he lost so many of his given family already. General Vang Pao's army was now his chosen family. He quickly endeared himself to CIA agents, Lao Army senior officials, and made a name for himself as a fixer. He was given complex problems to solve. In fact, he was so good at solving problems and disputes, he was constantly traveling back and forth between Laos and refugee camps in Thailand. And so when you hear about what it's like to cross the Mekong River from Laos into Thailand, imagine Nyob making that trip over and over again. Nyob has never truly stopped leading. He worked as a mediator and a supervisor at Ban Vinai Camp, the president of Phan Nhat Kham refugee camp. In 1988, when Nyob finally arrived in Wausau, he thought about hanging it up and focusing on himself and his family. He even tried for a bit. But when he saw problems that needed fixing, he got to work. In fact, he's still not done. In 2014, he was elected as president of the Wisconsin Hmong Lao Veterans of America, and he's done so much good that even though he was supposed to be done in 2022, his colleagues pressured him to run for an unprecedented third term. It was a landslide victory. And now today as a nation, we're still grappling with and trying to rectify the past to ensure that the legacy of Hmong soldiers is appropriately honored and preserved. But your valor will be remembered forever in communities like Wausau. And this is where I need you to be right here, my friend. But also you, Lang, you should probably come with him. Just wait a second. So that's why I want to present to you today this small token in honor of your lifetime of service to our community, to our nation, and to our world. So your courage and your service will never be forgotten. The debt of gratitude owed to you and your fellow Hmong soldiers can never be fully repaid, but thank you, Nyob, for your extraordinary contributions. I feel like a magician here. And to Yi Lang and all of the organizers at Hmong Wausau Festival, I'd like to thank you for creating this incredible event for our whole region, and I'd like to present this plaque to you. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you everyone who's shown up here. I really appreciate your service.
Governor Tony Evers!
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Please have a seat. It's great to be here for the 6th annual Hmong Wausau Festival. So every year since I've been governor, I've been able to be here and celebrate, and it's always a great time, and it's always a great time to honor the Hmong Lao veterans. Let's have another round of applause for your leader. And a lot of other people get involved in this, and thanks to the tireless work of folks at the Hmong American Center, Central Wisconsin Convention and Visitors Bureau, the City of Wausau, led by a great mayor, and the many vendors and volunteers who give their talent and time for this event. Every summer, this event brings thousands of visitors to Marathon County to celebrate the incredible culture, heritage, and traditions of the Hmong folks. This festival is also an important opportunity to learn about the many contributions and sacrifices the Hmong people have made in service to our country, from the courageous Hmong Lao veterans that fought during the Vietnam War to the many Hmong community leaders, educators, small business owners, and more who call Wisconsin home. As governor, supporting the success of the Hmong community here in Wisconsin has been one of my top priorities. In 2021, I was proud to designate May 14th as Hmong Lao Veterans Day here in Wisconsin, and every year since. On that day, we were able to lower the flags to recognize and honor the service and sacrifice of the Hmong Lao veterans. And through several of our grant programs, we've been able to help support, the work of outstanding organizations that serve the Hmong community. Organizations like the Hmong American Center, WUCMA, Hmong American Friendship Association, Hmong Institute, and the Hmong Chamber of Commerce. I've also declared it a year of mental health, and together with our friends and really talented people at WUCMA Project Resiliency, we've made great progress on the issue of supporting mental health in the Hmong community, helping to combat the cycle of trauma, address health disparities, and ensure underserved communities in our state can find the care they need. So thank you, WUCMA, for that. All these efforts help us get closer to the brighter future that we continue to work towards as a state. One that is more just, more equitable, and where every family and community has the tools and resources that they need to succeed. It's essential that we embrace and celebrate the diverse cultures that make us who we are, because Wisconsin wouldn't be a state today without the Hmong community, simple as that. So thank you again, everybody, for making it again to this great event, and enjoy every single minute of it. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Tony Evers. Before you step off stage, I'd like to bring Neng Xiong up here.
Same with you, Ming, as well too, and Lada, where usually I see Lada in her hat, but I don't know where she is right now. Neng Xiong, and Colonel Yi Hing, if you could come up here as well. And Commandant Thạc Trư, các bạn nói nhỏ. I'm going to have you come up here to Aiden. So to give a little cultural aspect, usually when the Hmong community is about to present an award or recognition to anyone, they usually want to call up here the mothers and the fathers or the elders of the Hmong community to be up here as well, or individuals that have achieved distinguished positions and titles and accomplishments. So today we have many individuals that are here that are very distinguished, accomplished, but we wanted to use this opportunity here to acknowledge and thank you, Governor, for your contribution and for being a strong ally of the Hmong community. So today, on behalf of the Hmong American Center, the Hmong Wausau Festival, and the Hmong community of Central Wisconsin, we want to provide you with a plaque that says the Hmong American Center, Inc. and the Hmong Wausau Festival thank and express our deep appreciation to Governor Tony Evers for joining us on July 29, 2023 as our keynote speaker. We're going to do a quick photo because we have our amazing photographer here.